Oh, what's going on, people? My name is Batman, and as many of you have undoubtedly heard by now, Battlefield has made some headlines recently for the implementation of their CTE updates into the main game. And this final DLC, Final Stand, is going to be the first time Battlefield has been able to realize its full potential. And I personally am kind of excited about it. If it wasn't for the wildly inappropriate and unfortunate launch of this game, this really would have been my game of the year. Even with its many flaws and issues, I cannot tell a lie. Flying around in the Little Bird and fucking up kids with those 25mm cannons was probably my favorite thing to do in gaming this year. And that's what makes the botched launch so frustrating for me, is that BF brought gameplay depth to the table. If not for all the glitches, you would have gotten significantly more out of your $60 buying Battlefield than you would spending that money on Ghost or Titanfall or even Destiny. There's been so many discouraging disappointments this year, watered down, overhyped titles. Battlefield could have been the saving grace of the gaming industry, but it wasn't because they fucked up royally. But I want to use this video to argue the point that it's time to forgive DICE. It is time for the gaming community and the old guard of the Battlefield community especially to try and keep an open mind and give Battlefield one more chance when it makes its final stand this December. Because the cold hard truth is that DICE devoted a heavy amount of support to this game even when there was nothing practical left to be gained from it. Battlefield being broken has become a meme. People are getting off on the hate for it in the comments on every YouTube video and Facebook post. The hate and the meme will persist for at least another year. And I do empathize with the haters. You know, look, I was a hater too. I recognize clearly the feelings of anger and betrayal that are conjured up by even mentioning the name Battlefield. The more cynical way to look at this entire CTE thing is that beta testing for Battlefield 4 began 6 months after release, and it finally had its full release a full year after it was made available to consumers. And that's not an entirely unfair opinion to hold. A lot of people paid $60 for a game that they ended up having to wait several months to actually play legitimately, free of bug interruptions, and especially if they are interested in the campaign, which was the most bug-ridden part of the entire game and got the least attention and thus remained broken for the longest period of time. And as any of you who have been watching me for a while can recall, this is the first time since launch that I've given DICE any real praise or positive reception for their work, because most of the work they've done this year has been playing catch up, fixing their own mistake, which is not something they deserve love for because they shouldn't have made the mistake in the first place. But I feel that with this most recent CTE update, DICE went above and beyond simply repairing the game. I feel that they went above and beyond what is expected of any developer in terms of game quality, even on launch day. And I also feel that all of the work that went into the CTE update was almost entirely and exclusively for the fanbase. There was very little to be gained on their end from this, and I want to go over why. Battlefield was fixed in April when they put the game on those super servers. I speculated they did this because they wanted the game to be fully operational before they announced Hardline, and I stand by that. But regardless, the game was fixed after those high performance and very expensive servers went live. It wasn't perfect, not by any stretch of the imagination. It still had issues, but it was as fixed as Call of Duty or Destiny is fixed, and that's the point I really want to drive home. It wasn't perfect after those super servers, but it was on par with the rest of the industry. If COD doesn't lag on purpose, then COD has been more broken than Battlefield, even when Battlefield first launched, for the last 5 years. In Destiny, you can get fucking post-mortem melee kills, as if after taking a shotty to the face, my corpse managed to stumble into an opponent on the way down and kill him. Titanfall matches could crash and disconnect if too many Titans nuclear ejected at the same time. Most multiplayer games have issues of one sort or another, and almost always pertaining to netcode problems. Following the launch of those super servers, Battlefield was on par with the rest of the industry and the shooter genre especially. It wasn't perfect, it was still glitchy, it still had issues, but name a multiplayer shooter that doesn't. Now, if their motivations were purely financial, they could have stopped there. The damage was already done. Hate for Battlefield was already a meme and an easy way to get lots of thumbs up on a YouTube or Facebook comment. When a game comes out in fall, it's going to see the vast majority of its sales during launch and Christmas long before April, and certainly long before this CTE update. Now, getting the game on those servers so that it could function properly was obviously important and necessary in order to retain the customers they already had left, and especially knowing that they were going to try and sell them another Battlefield next year. But after that, with hate prevalent and pervasive throughout the entire community. With most sales to be had already sold, what was left to win? Following the launch of those super servers, they announced Hardline, and once they announced Hardline, selling copies of Battlefield 4 is no longer their primary goal. If they have to choose between you buying Battlefield 4 or pre-ordering Hardline, they'd rather have you pre-order Hardline. The implementation of this update has undoubtedly won them some praise and some positive publicity. But of course some people are saying it's too little and too late, and they are right. And DICE knows they're right, and that's the point. This isn't going to provide a massive surge in Battlefield sales. It's fall. The consumer base is tapped the fuck out with anywhere from 1 to 6 huge popular $60 games that are being released in this coveted time slot right before Christmas. They're not going to drop any meaningful amount of money on a year-old game that they've already heard such negative things about, and this late in the game, the devs don't even necessarily want to move a bunch of copies of Battlefield 4 because, again, they want to build pre-orders for Hardline. And this long after launch, the population left on Battlefield is very, very low. This update will be felt and appreciated by only a very small fraction of the Battlefield fan base. It's going to benefit the Final Stand DLC sales somewhat, but I think most of the people who play Final Stand will be season pass holders whose money DICE already won before this update, because not many players buy only the last DLC in the season separately. And again, the consumer base in general is tapped the fuck out and broke. Even $15 is a lot when you're trying to save up for Destiny and Advanced Warfare and Far Cry 4 and Assassin's Creed Unity and Borderlands the pre-sequel and GTA on the next-gen consoles, and maybe a next-gen console itself, and maybe DLC or season passes for those games. There is very little tangible monetary gain in this, and yet just based on the magnitude and scope of the update, because it's not just fixing netcode errors, it's obvious a lot of hard work went into it. The only practical benefits of this massive update are an enhanced experience for the small chunk of the community still playing Battlefield, and an enhanced experience for those who will play Final Stand. It is a strong showing of good faith on DICE's part, undoubtedly an effort to make some reparations with the community and win back some love. And I think that the responsible, pragmatic, and most mutually beneficial thing for the community to do would be to reward this show of good faith with a little bit of that love that they see. It is time to put the launch and the brutal hatred that accompanies it behind us. Now look, I do think it's a very positive, good thing for the gaming industry and for our gaming community that DICE and EA received the intense levels of animosity and hatred that they received. And I think it's good that a lot of that hatred can be seen in the lackluster pre-order numbers for Hardline. In fact, I'd be curious to ask some of the execs if, looking back on it now, knowing how damaging this debacle has been, and seeing the severely negative impact it's had on Hardline sales and probably for Battlefield and Battlefield DLC sales as well, if they would reverse that decision and delay Battlefield 4's launch instead of trying to push it on the market through a combination of brute force marketing denials and trickery. Their behavior surrounding the launch of this game will remain a permanent stain, and a nasty one at that. It was unacceptable, deplorable, and shameful, but it was also forgivable. That's not to say that we should trust EA with our pre-orders. Forgive your enemies, but remember their names. But tolerance. The ability to move past hatred, to move past leaving nasty comments on every Battlefield-related post, whether it's a video on YouTube or a simple announcement on Facebook. This much is possible, indeed quite doable. It is of course a forgiveness that has to be earned through blood, sweat, and tears, but in this instance, I feel DICE has earned it. The sweat is in that CTE update. Again, if after the launch of those super servers Battlefield was on par with the rest of the gaming industry, and I think it was, then now it is above and beyond that standard. It has achieved a level of quality that all games ought to aim for, and the consistency, thoroughness, and ultimate effectiveness of the support DICE has provided, even with so little to be gained and in the face of such brutal animosity, is something that all developers should look at and say, well shit, if they can do it, we can too. The blood is in the sales. The sales for Battlefield 4 obviously took a huge hit. The sales for Hardline have taken a hit. Hardline seems like it might be dead on arrival. They had to push its release date back and sacrifice Christmas. The DLC sales have undoubtedly taken a hit. They'll be feeling the negative financial effects of this significantly for at least another year until Battlefront comes out. The tears are in the PR. Again, anything with the name Battlefield in it gets hate. Even if it's a simple tweet replying to a player's question, it gets flamed brutally. Punishment was distributed, And I'm ready to forgive them and let bygones be bygones for the same reason I would forgive a criminal who served the full length of their sentence, because that's what punishment is for. It's for fixing a mistake and ensuring that it does not happen again. But when punishment becomes open-ended, when it becomes permanent, it is rendered pointless, for it accomplishes nothing but destruction. And the question we have to ask ourselves now is if we're really prepared for the destruction of the Battlefield franchise. Medal of Honor was a disaster, so they cut their losses, and the industry, we as a consumer base, lost an entire franchise and all its potential. That last Medal of Honor game was bad, no doubt about it, but it was a cool concept. Battlefield with an infantry emphasis and kill streaks. It was a concept that, if properly built upon, could have been great, and diversity in the industry benefits us all. If it could have stayed around as a sort of watered-down Battlefield that appeals to casuals, maybe we wouldn't be seeing the gross casual infection spreading into the BF titles the way we are now with Hardline. Say what you will about Battlefield 4, but this game had depth. It had a shitload of replay value, and I can demonstrate that with the diversity of clips you see in my Battlefield videos. Helicopters, tanks, jets, a fat variety of infantry options, shotties, PDWs, and LMGs, running people over, using C4 to turn motorcycles into mobile IEDs. It's a diversity that is not easily attainable in Destiny or Titanfall or COD videos because those games have so very little depth and replay value. The analysts are saying Hardline is on track to sell as poorly as Medal of Honor. This is good and bad. Good because there's a clear rejection of the clear dumbing down of the game and a blatant appeal to casuals. Good because they are feeling the pain necessary to punish the act of burning the community with a rushed deadline and botched launch. But bad because at the end of the day, I would bet my YouTube channel that Hardline will still have more depth than Advanced Warfare or Destiny. And if Hardline and the Battlefield franchise itself goes the same route as Medal of Honor did, then console gamers will have lost the last bastion of FPS multiplayer that wasn't intentionally dumbed down, watered down, and mutilated in an effort to ensure that third graders and weekend warriors could still find it accessible. If Medal of Honor was still around, Medal of Honor would be the dumbed, watered down Battlefield game for third graders. If collectively, as a community, we cannot ever move past the launch of Battlefield 4, it will destroy the franchise. We will have destroyed a mighty forest simply because we were overzealous in our efforts to remove some poison oak. Please remember to rate. This is Batman signing out.